Welcome to AQMD On the Air. I'm your host, Lior Alpern. Our guest today is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. He oversees the workings of the Chamber and ensures that it is championing the economic prosperity of both businesses and citizens in Los Angeles. Mr. Gary Toebben, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
For our audience who are not familiar with the role of the LA Chamber, can you give us an overview of your mission and a sense of who your members are?
The Chamber was founded in 1888. We have 1,600 members and they employ 700,000 citizens in Los Angeles County. Our members pay dues to our organization. We're a private, nonprofit organization, and everything we do is around two missions. One, improving the economic vitality and the economy of Los Angeles region, and secondly, improving the quality of life for the citizens who live in our area.
The LA Chamber is focused on generating job growth that will help the region recover from the economic downturn. Likewise, AQMD has been investing in green technologies. Could you explain the sweet spot where green technology spurs green jobs and economic growth?
Well, over the last several decades, many companies have invested in green technology. Some estimates say that there are 1.5 million green tech jobs in California, and that those jobs have a total payroll of $56 billion in our state, and that they have saved over $50 billion in terms of energy costs. Companies have been investing in green technology for two reasons. First of all, they believe that it's good for the environment. But even more important than that, when a company makes an investment, they believe that it's good for their company and improves their bottom line. So as technology evolves, we would expect that green technology would do both of those things in our economy.
Transportation is the major source of air pollution in our region. And in 2008, LA County voters approved Measure R for a half-cent sales tax measure over 30 years to fund transportation improvements. Both AQMD and the LA Chamber support the 3010 initiative, whereby it will accelerate the construction of these projects to just 10 years. Could you discuss with us a bit about the job growth that will be generated by these projects?
The Chamber did support Measure R. Did so for two reasons. First of all, we know that there's too much congestion on our highways and on our streets. And the public, when they voted yes, said, we want to eliminate some of that congestion. Secondly, the public said, if we take some automobiles off our streets and highways, we will reduce the amount of emissions that automobiles put into the air, and that's good for us. And thirdly, the public said, this is a way to create jobs. These construction jobs, estimated to be 165,000 jobs, are exactly what our economy needs during this period of economic downturn.
The LA Chamber was a major supporter of the passage of California Senate Bill SB 827, which ended the moratorium on AQMD's ability to issue permits to local projects in the South Coast Basin. Explain to us why the LA Chamber got behind this piece of legislation, please.
This legislation was the most significant job-producing legislation passed last year. It was significant because we had companies and we had entities of government who couldn't move forward with projects because even though what they were doing was going to be much cleaner than what they were replacing, it still had some emissions, and so they needed the permits that AQMD had been previously issuing because they had been storing up these credits from projects that came in even cleaner than they were originally projected to come in. So these credits, the transfer of these credits to other entities was essential to creating jobs and to cleaning the air. Otherwise, we'd have the status quo, and that doesn't clean the air at all.
Mr. Toebben, I'd like to ask you one more question about transportation. The LA Chamber has been an active player in the region's efforts to secure federal funding for critical transportation infrastructure and diesel emission reduction programs. Approximately 40% of the nation's goods are transported through the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles and then through our region's freeways and railways. Could you explain the needs for these programs and the collaboration between LA Chamber, AQMD, and other regional players?
The LA Chamber took its first trip to Washington, D.C. About the Port of Los Angeles in 1890. The goal was to convince the federal government to put money into dredging out the harbor to make it a deep water harbor. That came to fruition in the early 1900s. Today, 43% of our cargo that comes in by water comes through the ports of LA and Long Beach. It's estimated that those imports and exports create 500,000 jobs in the Southern California region. That's why we think the port is so important. Because the port in moving goods also creates emissions, it's important to make that transportation as clean as possible. But it's also important not to try to get to a point where it is impossible to reach the emission standards, and so therefore we lose some of the jobs because they go to other ports and other locations around the country. So it's a real balancing act, and it's important for the business community and AQMD to work together with the ports to find that place where we do as much as we possibly can to improve the environment and at the same time maintain the jobs for the families in Southern California.
Shifting topics, the LA Chamber is committed to addressing climate change and to the responsible implementation of AB 32 and other air quality regulations. What are some of LA Chamber's guiding principles with regard to the necessary actions in order to help California meet its landmark climate reduction goals while at the same time maintaining a friendly business climate?
The key is balance. I was impressed that CARB just a couple of weeks ago approved some changes in their diesel regulations for trucks. And they said in making the changes that if they had imposed the initial suggested regulations, it would have caused a significant loss of jobs. And so they gave them some additional time to comply. That, I think, is the kind of sensitivity we need. We need to keep pushing forward, not stopping, on the goal of implementing AB 32. We have to be sensitive to the jobs that might be lost if we move too rapidly.
Cities and regions throughout the state of California are implementing the plans required by SB 375. Could you explain the importance of these plans and other issues related to greenhouse gases, including co-benefits, efficiency, and reduced costs?
Well, the intent of SB 375 was to do a better job of land use planning in conjunction with transportation planning, so that in fact you'd create less vehicle miles traveled as you develop new residential and commercial neighborhoods. Now, the key to this is twofold. First of all, developers and cities have to do their part, but secondly, then state has to do its part in providing the kind of funding that we need for the mass transit that is necessary in order to really make 375 a reality. It all hinges on the ability to convert car miles traveled into mass transit miles traveled, or walking, or bicycling. And in every case, it takes an investment typically of public dollars as well as private sector dollars.
In closing, I'd like to tap into your expertise and experience. How do you think AQMD can strengthen its partnership with chambers of commerce and other businesses in order to accomplish both air quality and economic growth objectives for the region?
I think communication with businesses is very important, because AQMD has its mission, but in order to do its mission and to help create jobs, those green jobs we were talking about, I think AQMD has to talk to businesses and say, okay, we need to do this. What is the best way to get the kind of reduction we need in emissions and improve the air, and at the same time create jobs and allow you to make your companies more productive. So in the end, we create a win-win situation. And that's the goal. And I know lots of people see regulations as win-lose. If in fact they're constructed in the right way, regulations should be win-win. It's just very important for business and regulators to work together. I think we worked together very well on the legislation that we passed together last year because we realized how important those permits were to cleaning our air and making progress. Sometimes there's an old adage, don't let perfect get in the way of progress. And I think it's very important that we make progress each and every day, even if we can't make it perfect each and every day.
Mr. Toebben, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining us and for your leadership, commitment, and vision for economic prosperity and improved quality of life of the businesses and citizens of this region.
Thank you.
And that's our show. Thank you for watching AQMD on the Air. Visit cleanairconnections.org to find out how you can help us clean the air that we breathe.
Let's work together.